The photographer gasped before anyone else did. My veil caught on the edge of the pew as I stepped forward, and that's when the murmurs rippled through the sanctuary. Not about the lace gown, not about the white orchids cascading from the arches, about my cheek. Deep violet, puffy, the kind of mark no veil or concealer could fully disguise. I remember the way my fiancé straightened his tie when he saw my aunt enter from the side door, the way his mouth curved, not worry, not regret, quiet pleasure. Then he leaned toward her, voice low but not low enough, and said, "It's so she remembers her place." The room broke into laughter. Laughter on my wedding day. Hi, my name is Leora V. Sage Monroe. Yes, my parents liked names that sounded like they belonged on book spines. Yes, I've fielded every pun. I'm 29 years old, a digital strategist from Virginia, and that morning in Richmond, I was supposed to become Mrs. Grayson Whitaker. Instead, I became something entirely different. I stood at the front, clutching peonies that suddenly felt too fragile, while 100 pairs of eyes fixed on my bruised face, and my aunt stared back. Not horrified, approving. That's when the truth landed hard. The bruise wasn't random. It was instruction, and I had instructions of my own to deliver. But first, I needed them to believe I was still the compliant fiancé. I didn't always carry the look of a warning in ivory silk. 2 years ago, Grayson Whitaker was magnetic in that effortless Virginia old money way. Ivy League smile, monogrammed cufflinks, stories about summers on the Chesapeake. My aunt adored him on sight, called him dependable, commanding, a man who knows direction. I confused dominance for devotion. The first fracture showed up 8 months in. He resented my new client win at the agency, said late nights made me distant. When I brushed it aside, he didn't laugh. The cold shoulder stretched 4 days. Then the critiques started. That skirt draws eyes. You talk over people in calls. It's unbecoming when you push back. My aunt would nod gently and say, "He only wants you polished. Darling, men like him are rare." By year 2, I'd reshaped around his edges. Quieter laugh, muted lipstick, smaller circle. The night before the ceremony, we clashed in the suite at the Jefferson Hotel. I refused the updated prenup clause he'd tucked into the portfolio. His jaw locked. He closed the distance. I remember the crisp scent of his aftershave, then blackout. When I came to, he was seated across from me, sleeves rolled precisely, observing like I'd finally passed a test. "You tripped," he said evenly, got worked up. I pressed my fingers to my cheek. The throb answered first. That's not what happened. He leaned in, forearms on thighs. "Leora, we're hours from a wedding half the Richmond business community is attending. You're not going to embarrass me over a little spat." I tried to rise. The floor swayed. He watched, not tender, resolute. "You will walk down that aisle and you will smile." Then he added, almost softly, "It's for your own good." My phone vibrated on the nightstand. My closest friend, Celine. He snatched it before I reached. "She doesn't need distractions today," he told her voicemail. By dawn, my aunt had swept into the suite. She didn't flinch at the swelling. She examined it. Then she said, "Perfect. You'll carry the reminder that marriage means deference." That's when the fracturing inside me reversed. Something stopped splintering and started plotting. The sanctuary was packed, stained glass filtering gold light, garden roses everywhere, a chamber ensemble playing something delicate and costly, and me at the altar with a bruise deepening under layers of foundation. Grayson pressed my hand when the officiant asked for objections. The hold wasn't affectionate, it was restraint. My aunt sat front row, posture rigid, eyes locked, ensuring compliance. When the vows began, Grayson leaned in and traced his thumb across my cheekbone, directly over the mark. "So she remembers her place," he whispered, glancing at my aunt with that same curl of satisfaction. A chuckle started somewhere, then spread. The whole room laughed. A bride marked and still performing. I scanned the faces. partners, clients, cousins, all mildly entertained. They waited for tears, for collapse, for quick forgiveness. Instead, I reached for the small lavalier mic clipped near the podium. The ensemble stumbled. "Before we proceed," I said, voice level despite the pulse in my jaw, "I'd like to share something with everyone." Grayson's grip clamped harder. Too late. The large screen behind us hum awake, and the sanctuary fell quiet. It froze on a still, Grayson in the hotel suite, sleeves turned, expression taut. Celine had slipped a discreet recording app onto my phone months back, after she'd clocked how he steered every conversation. It auto-uploaded to secure cloud, including last night. I tapped play. His voice filled the space. "You will walk down that aisle and you will smile." Gasps moved through the rows like wind. Then the sound, the clean, unmistakable slap. I didn't wince. I'd listened to it on loop while building this moment. I paused before the collapse. "I did fall," I told them calmly, "just not how you heard." Grayson stepped forward, charm gone, fury rising. "Turn it off." I tilted my head so the light caught the bruise fully. "No." My aunt half stood. "Leora, enough of this." I finally met her eyes. "You wanted me to remember?" I said softly. "I do." Then I lifted the slim folder from the podium, and that's when Grayson's certainty began to splinter, subtle at first, like glass under pressure before it shatters. Grayson's composure didn't shatter. It fractured quietly, the way fine crystal does right before the break. "What is that?" he asked, voice tight, eyes on the folder like it held venom. I turned to the guests instead. "For months," I said evenly, "I thought I was too much, too driven, too vocal, too independent. I drew the pages out slowly, one by one. But I wasn't." The first sheet carried the letterhead of Whitaker and Langley Advisors, Grayson's family firm. I held it high. 3 weeks ago, he asked me to sign a revised prenup that would fold my separate accounts into a family-controlled trust. A low murmur rolled through the pews. "What he didn't count on," I continued, "is that I know how to read fine print, and I know how to follow money trails. While he was busy adjusting my tone and my walk, I'd quietly retained a forensic accountant. The documents laid it bare. Shell companies layered like onion skins, undisclosed leverage tied to a looming SEC review, exposure that could sink the entire portfolio. You needed my clean record," I said softly, "to shore up your crumbling foundation." Grayson lunged for the folder. Wedding security, hired by my planner, ironically, moved in smoothly and held him back. I smiled at him. "Then this wedding," I said into the microphone, "was your lifeline, and I just cut the rope." The silence that settled wasn't uncomfortable. It was clinical, sharp, final. Grayson scanned the room, the investors who'd been chuckling earlier now stone-faced, his uncle rigid in the fourth row, a board member already typing furiously on his phone. "She's hysterical," he snapped. "She's unhinged." The word lingered. Unhinged. I stepped down from the altar, heels clicking against polished stone. "No," I corrected calmly, "I'm prepared." I angled so the last page projected large behind me, a notice of pending federal inquiry linked to one of his offshore vehicles. "I sent everything to the authorities this morning," I added. "That wasn't purely revenge, it was protection." My aunt rushed forward, voice shaking. "You'll destroy everything you've built." I held her gaze. My future was never meant to include erasure. Grayson's uncle rose abruptly, color gone from his face. "Is this accurate?" he demanded. Grayson said nothing, because he couldn't. The earlier laughter had vanished. Now the room wasn't entertained, it was recalculating, just as I had been. And then Grayson finally grasped it. This wasn't a tantrum, it was closure. He didn't chase me down the aisle, he didn't yell, he didn't plead. He stood there, immaculate, utterly exposed, while the scaffolding of his world quietly began to detach. I walked past the front pew where my aunt sat frozen, her practiced composure cracked. "You've humiliated us," she whispered. I paused. "No," I said gently, "I've freed myself." Outside the church, the Virginia air tasted cleaner, sharper, almost too bright. Celine waited by the car, engine idling. "You good?" she asked. I touched the bruise under my eye. "It'll heal." What won't heal is the look on his face when the realization hit. The accountant was real, the recordings were real, the inquiry is very real. But the prenup revision? I never planned to sign it anyway. The bruise was his lesson. It became mine. 3 months later, Whitaker and Langley announced a major restructuring. Grayson stepped down, citing personal matters. My aunt hasn't reached out. And me, I kept my name. Leora V. Sage Monroe. Not because it's eccentric, but because I learned something irreversible that day. If they demand submission, deliver accountability instead. This story stayed with you longer than the video itself? Don't walk away. Subscribe. This channel is for people who actually feel what they hear.